the intro screen that we normally show because I have been preparing something this week for myself and for Jonny.
I don't know what it is. Just so people know, I have no idea what this is.
I'm pretty proud of this. It has taken at least a couple hours of work, some hard backbreaking labor, a bunch of wiring, a little bit of lighting, more Scotch tape and electrical tape than I would like to admit, and one of the worst webcams you'll ever see. But I'm very proud of it, and I think I am ready to show you, Jonny. And you're seeing this as the lovely people online are seeing this at the same time.
Right, yeah.
And here we go.
Okay.
It's gonna be delayed for you. I just figured out.
It's gonna be delayed for me.
Yeah.
So I know.
I'm very proud of this.
It'll be 15 seconds before I see it.
I'm gonna wait for your response.
I don't know yet. I'm so
waiting.
Oh,
yeah.
Look at you.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah.
Makes my apartment look like crap. I'm glad you can't.
I've got a studio. I'm like a Tonight Show host.
You are.
This is beautiful. And the best part is I've rigged a little keyboard down here that's set up the stream. I don't have to leave the desk.
That's cool.
It controls everything. I've got my beautiful surface over here. I can check the chat if anyone wants to say hello.
Yeah.
I can read Reddit, if I'm not paying attention to you. I've got light.
Awesome.
I've got lighting, and here's the beautiful part, right? It changes, and I can change the lighting to any color that we want. Which color did I have it set to? That looks about right. So yeah, and I have it set to purple just for us. I'm pretty proud of this. This is in my basement.
That's so cool. Could you make it just go like random colors? Go.
No, I've got. Let's see what I got here. I got a fade. I don't know what this does. It just fades into red. I don't know what this does though. It's I guess it's supposed to change. Don't know if it does, but it's doing that. What else I got here? I got strobe. What does that do?
That's what I want. Yeah.
That's not very stroby. That's more like.
Oh no.
That's
I want it to go.
Yeah, that's just a faster fade. What's this?
Pentakill.
Oh, flash. What's flash do? That's not very flashy. That's just red. Oh, it changes colors. Oh, okay. Okay, that's not bad. I'm gonna stick to the purple though, because I don't wanna cause a seizure over here. Yeah, so that's our distracting intro to the Outplay podcast. Yeah. Episode 3. With my beautiful partner in crime, the man who had to leave his country for fear of repercussions of being a dirty bronze player, and came here to Canada to enlighten us about esports. Mr. Jonny Esports.
Yeah, that's me, everybody. I'm from the Esports radio show that airs on CKUW 95.9 FM on Wednesdays. And here to talk about League of Legends because I don't get to talk enough about League of Legends on my regular show. So here I am.
And myself, Globas from Lineage Esports, and also now this bar. So, so yeah, we got a lot to talk about this week, Jonny.
Yes, we do. There's tons. If you guys don't know, the NA and EU LCS seasons have completed their regular season. So now they're kind of looking into the playoffs, which will start in a couple of weeks, as well as seeing which teams will be promoted into the LCS for the next split.
Mm-hmm. And I gotta say, I think we talked last week. It was really funny where I thought Europe was gonna be like the most predictable week ever.
And it literally wasn't.
It was the exact opposite.
Literally was the weirdest week of League of Legends ever.
Yeah, I was genuinely surprised. I thought we'd have basically every team that I thought would win didn't win.
Yeah, exactly.
And so
except for like Origin, because I don't think you would assume Giants was going to beat Origin, but like.
Yeah, I mean that's fair. Yeah.
Besides that, everything else seemed topsy turvy.
It did, and I gotta say though, I was reading this week the LoL Esports power rankings, and they talk about which teams ranked up where, and they kind of put them into tiers, right? Like even though they're placed like 1st to 10th, they put them into tiers. And it was funny to me because North America and the other regions, the tiers were pretty like even. Like you had 1 or 2 teams in the S tier, 2 or 3 teams in the A tier, 2 or 3 teams in the B tier, and it went down like that.
Right, right.
Europe was like, it was like 3 teams S tier, 3 teams A tier, everyone else like C. and it's very accurate because if you look at the standings, you have just a huge gap where the upper teams have such a great win ratio against the lower tier teams, and I actually think that if there's any team that's gonna or any LCS region that's gonna be more the most shifted next season, it's gonna be Europe. Like, I think all the bottom tier teams are gonna just change entirely, if not by relegation, by rosters.
Oh yeah. Well, if you just look at we're going to talk about it, but if you just look at the challenger teams that have won their promotion or whatever are going to be in the promotion tournament, I mean, they look way better than the bottom teams of the EU LCS. So like, yeah, you look at that, and we're going to talk about that later. But and it just seems like that's just the direction that's going to go to. I would agree with you there.
I think I wasn't surprised to see G2 came on top. Right. I thought. And I talked about this before, I think I said, I actually thought Vitality was the best team. But Vitality, H2K, and G2 are all off by 1 win each. With G2, H2K, and Vitality in that order. And I'm not surprised by any means, because G2 was actually, surprisingly really good. Yeah. But I do think that all 3 have a chance of doing well in playoffs, and I think that all of them are on the same caliber. So this week, when, I think... I'm going to check back here. But I feel like they both lost games. They all lost games this week. H2K lost to Unicorns. Vitality lost to Rawcat, which was surprising to me. And I feel like G2 lost the game. No, they didn't lose the game this week. That's why G2 came on top. That's right.
Yeah, because everyone else... I remember seeing someone tweeted a meme, basically. It said, hey, guys, all the top teams, hey, guys, let's all go lose together. It'd be hilarious this week. Let's troll everybody. Haha, okay. And G2 was like, okay, we'll do it too. But then they were like, no, just kidding. So,
it's pretty accurate.
Yeah, because you have Fnatic losing to Elements. You have Unicorns beating H2K. You have Rokat beating Vitality. And then G2 was like, okay, no, we'll beat Splice, though. Sorry.
No, it's
that first day was ridiculous.
It's pretty depressing, I'll be honest, because it's like, if there's going to be this big gap, because there is, and we can't say there isn't, there is this big gap between the upper tier European LCS teams and the lower tier ones.
Right.
But if you're losing games like this, especially coming to playoffs, it's kind of sad.
Well, especially since we talk about H2K, I think we were talking about H2K, at least I was, about them being like a world's hope for Europe. And if you can drop a game to a bottom tier in the EU, not so good. Like the Unicorns of Love they lost to, granted, are a decent team. But if you want to compete at Worlds, you can't be losing to a team like Unicorns.
Yeah, and it's something that's at these teams, you can make the point that's and this happens every LCS split, where there's always some teams that halfway into the split kind of get their cohesion and get better.
Right.
I don't feel like any of the lower tier European teams did that, except for maybe Fnatic. I don't feel like any of the lower tier European teams got better, but they're losing games. The upper tier teams are losing games, and for teams like H2K, Vitality, Vitality is actually one I think that got a lot better as the season went on. Vitality, I think, was a star team from the beginning. I would have put them top 2 because I also thought G2 was terrible going into the split, or I assumed they were going to be terrible. But Vitality kind of started off they're okay, and they got better. Good for them. But I don't feel like these lower European teams did that. So when you have these upper tier teams losing, I can't even make an argument that's just the other teams are getting better and they got caught off guard or something. It's no. It's you took your eye off the prize for a week and you lost, and it's annoying because you shouldn't be doing this. You should be at least. In your losses look strong, and a lot of these teams literally looked like they were falling asleep. They were falling asleep at the wheel. You're leading the pack, and you decided to go take a nap.
A lot of these games too, like you were saying, weren't even these ones where it was close, and then maybe a Unicorns of Love from last season, there was the sneak Baron steal that just happened to turn it around or whatever. There was kind of none of that. A lot of these games in EU this week were the lower tier teams actually just straight up dominating these upper tier teams. The one I'm the biggest surprise of is Fnatic personally. Fnatic's kind of a middle of the pack team, but they look so good on a world stage at IE and Katowice, and they come into this week, they lose to Elements and to Origin. In games they just like didn't they just shouldn't have lost. And Spirit looks so good at IM Katowice, but looks so bad this week in the LCS. So it's like the most important thing is consistency, right? And you're not getting that for Fnatic, and that's why they sit at a 9-9 record.
I gotta apologize to stream. Apparently my mic was too loud. I was looking at the standings, so I wasn't paying attention to chat. We had an issue the last few weeks where my mic has been really echoey, and it doesn't sound great. So I pumped up the gain, and I guess I pumped it up too loud. Because according to everyone on stream, I'm way too loud. So I'm hoping if you can hear me right now, it's a little bit better. I got Magni yelling at me in chat, so my bad. Yeah. I'm new to this thing.
Sorry. I should have been paying attention to that too. My bad.
Yeah, no, the consistency thing is very accurate, and it's like I don't know what to say because Europe seemed like the most consistent region so far. Not to say the best region, I'm gonna say most consistent. Yeah. Most consistent is what I'm gonna say, because I feel like they for the most part haven't lost games to these lower tier teams. When I raise my voice, it gets worse. Okay, which happens a lot. But this past week, I feel like everybody took their eye off the prize, and I'm not sure why. Like, what confuses me is like sometimes you see this happen around major events. Like you'll see teams either prepping on an old patch or on a new patch. So when you get into these weeks of LCS that are just before a tournament, sometimes you see teams get sloppy because they haven't prepared for their opponent. They prepared for their upcoming playoff or like IEM.
Right.
But this is 2 weeks before playoffs, so they have time to prepare for their teams, and you also don't know who you're playing against.
Right.
Because...
Well,
go ahead.
And the other thing that sometimes people do is sometimes if they play a stronger opponent, though just the way the LCS is set up, they play a stronger opponent on day 2 than they do on day 1, they'll put all their preparation time into looking at the team they're playing in day 2 because they're just going to assume they're going to beat the day 1 team.
Right.
So... I don't 100% know if that applies to, say, H2K, who played Elements in the second game, but played Unicorns of Love in the first one and lost.
Yeah.
But maybe that applies to Fnatic, who maybe were looking past the Elements to be looking at their second game against Origin, which they both ended up losing both of them. Maybe you could say the same thing about G2, like they were looking past Splice because they just wanted to play the Unicorns later. Like sometimes that happens, but it just seemed to happen through every team though. So that's seems ridiculous.
And I think looking to playoffs, it's going to get very interesting because I feel like there's no completely one-sided matchup going into this, and we're not going to be talking about Ultra playoffs this week because of the gap between now and playoffs. We're going to be talking more about playoffs next week, or what our thoughts are on playoffs. But I do want to talk about what the matchups are, so we can let people know, and a really neat, nice feature that Riot added. So the way that the playoff works, and we'll probably re-explain this next week, is the top 6 teams move to playoffs. The bottom 3 teams move to the relegation tournament, and the 7th place team just basically gets a vacation. So the top 2 teams get a first round bye. So they don't play at all. They get an extra week off. The 3rd place team will play against the 6th place team. So in this instance, it's Vitality will play against Fnatic. And then the 4th place team will play against the 5th place team. So that'll be Origin versus Unicorns of Love. Now, it used to be, I'm trying to remember the system correctly, the winner of the 4th and 5th team, the matchup with the 4th team, the 5th team, would play against the 1st place team. So in this case, you'd have the winner of Origin and Unicorns playing against G2.
Right.
And you'd also get to play against H2K would be the winner of Vitality versus Fnatic. Right? So that's it's. But the thing was is that there was times where it actually was it was good or bad to be the 1st, 2nd team based on who wins, right? Because you could potentially have the 3rd place team and the 4th place team if you assume you go by standings, or you could have the 5th place team and the 6th place team win, and then they play against the 1st and 2nd, and it gets this weird thing where there's no advantage being 1st or 2nd in the standings as long as you get the bye.
Yeah.
But this year, Riot changed it, so now if you are the 1st place team, you will play the lowest seeded other quarterfinalist.
Right.
So, in Vitality versus Fnatic, if Vitality wins, they will not play Vitality ever, because Vitality is the third-seeded team, so they will never play them if they win, because they're above everyone else in the playoffs.
Right.
If Origin or Vitality doesn't win and Fnatic wins, then G2 is guaranteed to play against Fnatic because they will play against the lowest seeded possible team, which would be Fnatic. H2K will face whoever's the highest possible. So if Vitality wins, they play against Vitality. If Origin wins, they play against Origin. It all depends on the upper seeding they'll play against.
Yeah, and if this confuses anybody, this is basically exactly how the NFL does their playoffs. So if you're familiar with the NFL, it's the same thing. It's just to make sure that if you're first, you're playing against the lowest possible seeded team. So there's an advantage of being first. That's all it really is. It's not that confusing if you just think about it. Or again, if you're familiar with the NFL, that's how they do theirs after the wild card weekend or whatever, right? So yeah.
And when it comes to the lower tier teams, 8, 9, and 10. They go to what's called the relegation tournament. Or, sorry, the promotion tournament.
Promotion tournament,
yes, they've renamed it.
So now it sounds positive. Now it's not just
positive, yes, positive connotations.
Instead of the scrubs playing against each other, it's now like, oh, people are getting promoted because they're good.
So in Europe, I can't even see it on the website yet, which is kind of annoying. But what will happen is the lower 3 teams will play against the upper 2 teams that won the Challenger Series playoffs in their respective region. In Europe, that's Huma and Copenhagen Wolves.
Yes.
So go ahead.
The matchups will be starting tomorrow at 6 o'clock, I think our time. Maybe I have to double check that. It'll be the first match will be the Giants Gaming, who finished last, versus Copenhagen Wolves, and then the next match after that will be Splice versus the winner of either Giants or Copenhagen Wolves. And then the match after that will be Rocat and Huma playing against each other. And then basically the losers of those matches will then play against each other on the last one. And, sorry, I have to backtrack a bit. The winner of the second match is promoted to the LCS as well. I believe if I got that right.
Yes. I know, it's really hard to explain without pictures, honestly. Yes. But basically, you have the 5 teams will play. The lowest 3 LCS, the top 2 Challenger, and the top 3 teams will move on. But the lowest Challenger, or the second place Challenger, and the lowest place LCS have a disadvantage in that they basically play one bracket backwards, where they have to play an extra game to qualify. So Giants are is it best of 5, I believe?
Yes.
I believe they're all best of 5. You can double check for me, since you seem to have it up and I don't.
Yeah, the team secured 5 teams. Best of 5, yes.
Okay, so Giants, being the lowest team, are 1 best of 5 from being eliminated, and Copenhagen Wolves have to win 2 best of 5s to get in, and Huma, who will play against Rocket, I believe. They are 1 best of 5 from coming in, and they actually get a double chance because they will go to the losers bracket if they lose. So yeah, it's pretty interesting, and I feel like this is the one region that's going to have the most roster shuffles, or not roster shuffles, sorry, team shuffles, and that I feel like the lower LCS teams are pretty on par with Challenger teams. And it's funny because the 2 Challenger teams that qualified for this are actually not even the top 2 Challenger teams in Europe. They were the 3rd and 4th place teams. They upset Millennium and Inspire Esports, who were the 2 teams who were expected to make it, and were full of former LCS veterans. Mind you, actually, Huma's got some former LCS veterans. But they upset them both, so neither of the 2 teams that were the best in the Challenger Series throughout the year are actually in this tournament at all. And, I mean, the argument to be made is, like, should there have been better seeding in maybe the playoff brackets, just the way it works. But, 1 upset, and they get a chance now at the LCS, which I'm not happy about because I'm not a fan of Huma. We talked about that last week.
Right.
About all the shady stuff going on there. But, Copenhagen Wolves has been in a few times. They're basically that team that you see every other split.
Yeah.
So
the team hosts that would just kind of go back in and then leave. And
exactly. So, yeah, I'm pretty excited for these matches because I think it's going to be pretty on par. I think it's going to be Clown Fiestas all the way through. So.
Oh, yeah, totally.
I'm going to honestly say I have trouble seeing Giants winning a best of
No,
5.
the thing is, the Giants have one LCS caliber player in ex Pepe, I think he calls himself now, formerly Pepinero, and the rest are a bunch of scrubs.
They just replaced their other LCS veteran.
Yeah.
And with some guy named Hustlin.
Mm-hmm.
Who apparently is toxic.
Yeah.
Oh, it's
and that team, this Giants team for the past couple of seasons has looked like a team that just extremely disorganized. All they really had is this one carry in Pepe, and sometimes he would do stuff, but sometimes he would do stuff like he put in his contract that he had to play ADC one game. I can't remember the opponent.
Oh, no way! I remember this.
I have to play ADC this one game. Like, you're our carry mid laner, but it's in his contract, so he played ADC. He played Lucian some random game, and it was bad. Like, it was you can't have stuff like that in your contract. It should be like, no, we need to play to win. You're not playing because you just for fun want to play ADC a game. Like, super weird. So this Giants team it definitely doesn't even belong to LCS, and I do hope they probably will. They probably will be defeated, and we'll see a replacement there.
I'm going to argue with you a little bit. I'm going to argue with you here. Giants used to be a good team. Giants, when they came in, they were an all-Spanish team. And they're now, like, what, 1/5, 2/5 Spanish?
Right.
And 2 Koreans they brought in.
Mm-hmm.
They were a team that, it was funny because they were like, they were a team that you felt proud to see them get into the LCS because you're like, well, I don't think they're going to do great. They're not a great team. They actually upset a few teams to get into the LCS.
Mm-hmm.
But they looked like a team that they were proud of themselves. And as a viewer, you would watch this team and be like, good for you. You're the underdogs. You did it. You did something great. You know, even if you only get one split, all the power to you. And they did okay in the first few splits. Like the first 2 splits, I believe, or 1 split. They did okay, and they seemed to do...
And they were that team that upset some teams, too, every once in a while. And you were just like, I wonder if they're going to pull that upset this week. Like, you would wait for that. This season, not so much. This season, you're like, they're just going to lose.
But and it's one of those things that's like, I don't even know what it is anymore, because they brought in for a little while... I'm trying to remember what his name was. He was a support player, I believe. No, it was... Oh, I'm going to forget his name. It's going to bother me. I am so sorry. I'm going to sit here and figure it out. But there was an interview with one of the players they had brought in for a little while. And they had said how... He had said how the team barely plays. And how... who was it? I can't find it now. I'm trying to look at the roster and it's not here. I believe it was their jungler they had for a little while. But they talked about how they barely practice. Like, he was like, I was so excited. He's like, I was on 2 challenger teams. Now I'm going to be in the LCS. I'm going to play for these guys. And he came in. They were like, we practice, like, 1 game a week, maybe. And then some of them play, like, solo queue, and some don't even play solo queue. And the guy was like, what's going on here? Like, you know, like, they're like, we've given up. Like, they had rolled over and died. And I agree with you in that now Giants is a team that should be the LCS, and they're a team that are going to, you know, they're not gonna make it out of this promotion tournament. But I'm gonna argue the fact that they used to be a good team, and it sucks to see them die like this. But you know, they're past their prime.
And then speaking past them, who else we think could potentially make it here? So let's talk about the teams being relegated. Splice, I think, is a team that I like, sort of like. I like Senkux. I think I like Yamato Cannon's personality. I don't know how good of a coach he actually is. But we've seen him, you know, being a...
You like his voice is what you like.
I like his voice.
We all do.
Yeah, like, we just like hearing Yamato Cannon. We want to see him in interviews. He sounds like a villain from a Bond movie. It's awesome. You want to see more Yamato Cannon.
You want to hear some audiobooks read by him.
Pretty much. But as an actual coach, it's hard to say because his players aren't all that great other than Senkux. And that might even be I'm diluted by seeing Senkux get a Penta this year, I believe it was. Or was it a Quadra? He got a really good Quadra at some point. So I don't 100% know how I feel about this team being able to make it. I do like Rokat in a lot of ways. I think Tabs is a good ADC. I think Airwalks is a decent jungler. But this is a team that Rocat always like on paper always felt like they could make another step and be like at least not maybe like a top tier team, but at least a middle tier team. But they never quite make that step.
And Rocket recently swapped out their support for Noxiac, which I think was an upgrade, but in the short term, obviously had some issues. And I feel like I'll be honest here. I feel like both of the LCS teams. If we assume for a second, I feel like Giants are going to lose the first best of 5, and then you're going to have Copenhagen Wolves play against Splice, and you're going to have Rocket, which are already going to play against Huma. I feel like both the LCS teams are going to come out strong here. I think they're going to win because the challenger teams going into this tournament, like I said, are not even the top 2 challenger teams, but they're 2 teams that look sloppy even against each other.
Yeah.
Like, you would say, like, oh, one of them upset the top team in Inspire, and they upset the top team in Millennium, and the other team upset at Inspire, and you're like, maybe these teams just showed up and they're really strong. And then you saw them play best of 5, and it was the biggest clown fiesta in Europe.
It was awful. Copenhagen's, I think we talked about last week, Copenhagen's took the first 2 games and then just lost the rest of them to Huma. Yeah. And that 5th game they lost to Huma was definitely a game they just should have won anyway. And so Copenhagen's, doesn't seem to have like the pedigree to maybe be able to come out of this promotion tournament ahead of either Rocat or Splice there.
Yeah, I agree. I think that we're going to see one of the teams make it in, and I'll be honest, it's a complete coin flip between the 2 because I think they're both just shoddy. But I think that one of them will make it in just on the assumption that Giants is awful. Like, I think Splice and Rocket are a step above, just barely. Because I feel like there's challenge teams. Like if it was Inspire or Millennium in this tournament, I would almost say all 3 LCS teams would make it out. Like they would not make it out. Like they would lose. But I feel like just because on the challenger side, they didn't even get the best teams showing up.
Right.
It's not going to be. It's going to be a clown fiesta all the way.
Well, yeah, I totally feel like. Totally. I totally feel like again, if Copenhagen wins and they play Splice, I think Splice would win that. And I believe Rocat would beat Huma, so you're just going to watch Copenhagen Wolves and Huma play each other again, and who knows who wins that game.
Right.
So one of those 2 teams will make it, but it'll be a weird team, and they might not be a very good team once they get to the LCS. But at the same time, sometimes organizations just like getting to the LCS, and they swap a bunch of players.
Huma, I believe, has to sell if they make it, eh?
Right.
I think that there was a stipulation based on the complete, excuse my language, jackassiveness that was the owner. So they have to sell if they make it in. Copenhagen Wolves, I think, will keep the name and the brand, but I think we'll probably replace half the roster with like Millennium and Inspire, who are great rosters that are just sitting there. And so I think that's what's going to happen in Europe. I don't know if I have anything else to add to that.
Yeah, no, that's pretty much how I have that shaken down too. We'll see what happens. Again, this tournament does start tomorrow, March 24th, for that first best of 5 series against Giants Gaming and Copenhagen Wolves. So check that out, and we'll talk about the results of that next week on our show as well as we talk about the playoffs going in. But let's move on to North America region. Let's come back home a little bit, and we can talk about how the season ended off there and where everyone sits in the standings and all of that. Basically, it's been known for a while. They clinched first place. Immortals is still going to sit on top. Counter Logic Gaming was able to pull out being able to win second, and that honestly I think is a very interesting thing because of how Cloud9 ended the season. Team Liquid's able to take that 4th place spot to be able to into here, and Energy, Esports, and TSM were able to take 5 and 6 there, so they're going to stay. I'm glad that Eagle Fox has the 7th spot because I didn't want to see them get potentially relegated because I think they're a pretty good team, so they're safe. The teams up for the promotion tournament are going to be Renegades, who were destined to be last place, but they ended up finishing 8th, so good for them. Team Impulse is 9th, and Team Dig and Huss fell on their face on their way to finishing last here. So,
my thoughts. I actually got quite a bit for this. I think there's a lot of stories to talk about. I'm going to condense a few of them down because I feel like they're less exciting. Immortals, there's not much to say here. They had the strongest roster aside from TSM, who I thought were going to be much stronger. Coming into this, I put the top 2. 17-1 doesn't surprise me. All the all the applause
Well,
and
I wouldn't say it doesn't. If you talked to me before the season, and I thought Mortals would finish second or third, I was thinking like I don't think they would go 17-1 or
no, that's fair.
look like like I don't think they'd be this dominant.
No, that's fair.
The biggest question mark on this Immortals team for me was Wild Turtle, and I'm a fan of Wild Turtle. But then he goes in and he gets over 100 kills this split, and I can't remember off the top of my head if that beats Bjergsen's record, but it was at least very close.
Yeah, I would agree. I think Wild Turtle is the one question mark going into this. I didn't see them go 17-1 at the beginning of the split, and what I meant was that about halfway in, it was like, well, they're probably at this point, like there was no team to me that was going to show up and even like surprise them. So 71 is no surprise to me. All the applause has to go to Huni and Rainover. There was a lot of people even last split when they did the 18-0 who were like, oh, Huni and Rainover aren't that strong. Obviously,
the region's just weak.
Something they have to be doing something right. That their LCS record win-loss is what 35 out of 36 past. I might be doing the math wrong. It is 36. So 35 out of 36 past LCS games they've won, and that's insane. And that's gonna be a record that we're probably gonna be talking about years from now.
And in fact, if you include like individual games in playoffs, they still only dropped that one game
there's to
Origin in the final, or 2 games to Origin in the final. So overall, even just individual games, they've lost 3 in the past.
It's
in regular season.
It's insane. It's insane. And CLG, I'm surprised they finished top 2 because I thought Cloud9 was much stronger. But Cloud9 fell in their face this past week, and they did not do great. And I think that they'll be a strong team in the playoffs, and I'm hoping that they can get away from the Darshan split push. And I feel like we saw a little bit of that this week. We saw Stixay show up, which was awesome. And I'm hoping that we see that as a continuing trend because Stixay, I think, because of Afromoo, has always looked great. Because Afromoo is just, I think, an incredible support. Yeah, he is. But I think that he's in the perfect environment to become a top-level AD carry. And I'm hoping that it happens. So, all the power to them.
Well, this is where I bring it. If Afromoo makes Stixay look like a decent ADC, how much do you think Afromoo did to Doublelift? Because Doublelift was a long time the best ADC in North America. And that was just kind of consensus. Some people argued sneaky, but for a lot of people, it was Doublelift. How much did Afromoo make Doublelift, who was it still is just a good ADC, look like the best ADC? Like, how much was that just Afromoo, do you think? In hindsight, anyway.
In hindsight, it's actually, I would still say he didn't do much in that front, because I would argue that they were both equally as strong in their respective roles. I still think Doublelift is a very strong AD carry, but I think that his playstyle doesn't fit great with TSM and Yellowstar, and that's why there's a whole issue there. But I think that, even this week with TSM, I think Doublelift was the shining star this week. He looked amazing. And CLG, when Doublelift and Afromoo were together, they were the win condition. Like, they were so good together that was the win condition, was Doublelift get ahead and carry the game. And Afromoo's role at the time was just babysitter, and now he's doing that literally with a baby AD carry, a guy who's new to the LCS in Stixay. But with Doublelift, his job was keep him alive when we win the game. And it worked for how many splits now? And now he's with somebody new, and he's used to playing that style. So he still does it, but he's perfected it to the point that Stixay makes a lot more mechanical mistakes and a lot of positioning mistakes that Doublelift doesn't make. At least in the aspect of team fights, I think Doublelift is always being caught out, farming too much. But I think in the aspects of a team fight, Stixay is nowhere near on par with Doublelift, but Afro makes him look okay because he's just so good at babysitting him.
Right.
So yeah, I think that was a long-winded response, but I think that Doublelift in his own right looked great. I think that when you pair him with a great support, though, it just made them look even better.
Just made them look. Yeah. Okay, that's fair. Actually, fun thing, I was just looking at the rosters here. Did you know Hotshot GG is still listed as their backup?
That doesn't surprise me because TSM, I believe, has Reginald. I think
Reggie is still listed as a backup mid, and Odd One's still listed as a backup jungle.
Yeah, it's because
anyway, random.
real quick tidbit on that. That's because each LCS team has to have a substitute that is immediately available upon if Bjergsen has a heart attack, they have to have somebody who's available that second.
Right.
And that's why they have Reginald, because Reginald's going to be there. And so a lot of these LCS teams have people who are substitutes who you will never see play for that team ever, but they're there because there's somebody who's immediately available if hell or high water, they're available.
Right.
Whereas, CLG will probably never put in Hotshot GG unless needed, unless they go to Korea to go boot camp with like a few splits ago. but yeah, they'll never actually put him in.
All right. Anyway, sorry. Random topic.
You know what? I'm glad.
She's still out here.
I'm glad you brought that up because I do want to talk about a story that never came about.
Okay.
The Team Liquid 10-man roster.
Oh right.
This was a really interesting story coming to the LCS. This was the first team. Mind you, there was the Cloud9 Kai Bunny Fufu swap, which they actually brought in. But Team Liquid had talked about this 10-man rotating roster. They were going to use all 5 Team Liquid Academy players, all 5 Team Liquid players, and then have this like a team that you didn't know who you were facing that week.
Yeah.
Were you facing the Academy team? Were you facing the Liquid team? Were you facing half of both? Yeah, I don't know. We'll find out. But it never happened.
Yeah. All that happened was I Will Dominate retired, and then Dardoch played jungle.
Well, you also had Quas. Something we don't know about. Something in behind the scenes happened that they were just like, you're not playing anymore.
Right.
And so they were like, okay, well, we have to bring in a new top laner. And they brought in a guy who wasn't on the Challenger team. If I remember correctly, it was a different top laner on the Challenger team. They brought in Lurlo, a different top laner. So they still had 10-man. And then they brought in Dardoch immediately, which I think who was not surprising to do that well, because Dardoch was somebody who, coming into the Challenger Series, was, I think, North America's best jungler. And I love the quote that I heard on the LCS this week, where Dardoch believes he is North America's best Lee Sin that's not an import.
Not imported.
Yeah, not imported Lee Sin. And it's accurate. It's true. And I think Dardoch's great. Phoenix, they talked about how apparently Phoenix and Youngbin were going to be swapped around, but in scrims, Phoenix would just dumpster Youngbin so much that Youngbin just got too nervous that he didn't want to go into the LCS.
It's brutal. And realistically, Piglet, they weren't going to sub out Piglet.
Why does Graham look like he's in a porn shoot? Thanks, Steve. Steve, this is just for you. This little red here. Piglet was never going to be swapped out. I mean, Fabi is the gatekeeper, but I don't think we were ever going to see the Piglet swapped out. And then they did swap out Smoothie and Matt, and apparently that was because Matt was a much better shot caller. And if you've seen the new Drive story about Matt, they talk about that a lot, about how his father was really proud of him because he didn't see League as a real thing. Like, he didn't see it as like a career choice or anything that brought you, aside from maybe some money, didn't bring you any real skills. But then he started seeing in chat, he would hear his son in the room over say, like, leading these people, and he's just like, wow, he's learning how to deal with people. He's learning how to lead people, conflict resolution, all these different things. He's like, maybe League's respectable, maybe this is a real thing, and we're seeing that in the games that when they brought in Matt, it slowly got better. And Team Liquid as a team, I completely wrote off. Like, I thought all the players were terrible because I thought, like, well. Even
aside from Piglet, I would say, yeah.
Even now, I didn't like Piglet because I feel like I feel like Piglet, and I still do feel like he's just too cocky to be reined in. But it seems like that right now he is being reined in. He's become the new Doublelift. He's Doublelift now because he's
totally
mechanically a god, but completely impossible to control mentally. Like you're trying to get an emotional leash on the guy, and it's hard. But
beginning of the season for Piglet, I felt like this whole team was just like garbage, and Piglet was the only person that even kept games close. And it wasn't like Piglet trying to overstep and go and then get killed because he's trying to do too much. He would actually like, okay, well, my team's dying. I know I have to get this CS. I need to take down this tower because that's at least going to help my team, and then we'll be in this game. And,
that sounds like Doublelift.
Yeah, exactly. And Piglet just like put them in the game still, even in games they didn't belong to be in, early in the season anyway, when they weren't winning games.
And I do think that Piglet suffers from something I would call big egoitis, and but it is funny because it makes a lot of good headlines now because they beat TSM and suddenly Piglet says they're the top 2 team in North America, or they're the best team in North America, And then Seraph comes out and says Renegades is the second best team in North America. And it's like, we don't need playoffs anymore. Team Liquid and Renegades are the best 2 teams. Renegades can't even make the playoffs, and they're the second best team in North America.
Hey, they've been beating everyone left and right lately, though.
Oh, man. So, yeah, Team Liquid, I think, is a success story for North America for the split because they were a team that just looked, I didn't think they were going to make playoffs, and they did pretty good. I think that, you know, the 10-man roster might have been a failure, but I think that, obviously, they took the best parts of each and blended it together, and it worked. So, good for them. And I'm excited to see them in the playoffs. Energy, I'm disappointed. I am disappointed.
Yeah, I am too. I really was hyped about GBM coming here. This is a guy who, when he was in Korea, was like one of those next fakers, right? So when we saw him come to North America, I was like, this guy's gonna wreck everybody. And you saw a little bit of that in the beginning of the split when he kind of first started, but past that, not that GBM specifically been disappointing, but he hasn't been dominating everybody like I kind of thought he would, and hasn't been enough, especially like with a team that has both him and former world champion in Impact. Altec, who I always thought was a pretty darn good ADC, and just not a lot of answers coming from this team.
I think that I feel like Energy's biggest issue is that they have no cohesion. I feel like they have very strong laners. I feel like Conquan is okay. Altec, I feel like, is like one of the most tiltable players ever because Altec stepped down from 2 teams now, and he comes back after like a week. But there's so many times where I feel like there's discussions going on behind the scenes where, you know, they're trying to figure out, well, what's the problem? And Altec's like, oh, it's me, guys. I need to stop playing. And I don't know this, right? This is all
right. This is speculation.
Speculation. But Altec has done it twice now, where he stepped down from a team when they start doing bad. And Altec himself usually is one of the best players on the team. Like he's an amazing AD carry and a non-import AD carry at that, which is you know, great because Energy filled 2 slots with some of the best imports you could get.
Yeah. Like when he was in Winter Fox, there he was one of the best parts of that Winter Fox team. And as a guy who I always kind of looked at like,
and Gravity.
Maybe there'll and Gravity. I just always looked at like, man, this guy. He's a good sleeper pick for like fantasy because he'll get you all those fantasy points and he's not a big name. And just like a guy who's, and people sometimes make fun of ADCs for this, but a guy who's such a good cleanup guy where if everyone's low, he can come in and clean up matches and be able to get some kills at the end of a team fight. But just like, it just wasn't happening for any member of this team. Moon seems like a jungler who could be good on a team that he could communicate with. He's basically the only primary English speaker on this team besides Altec, and Altec has to kind of translate for him, I hear, and it's just like that's rough.
I don't know about that. It's hard because I'm a jungle main, so I kind of understand that if you couldn't communicate with your team, it's aggravating. But Moon, I think, is the weak spot in the team. Moon and Conquan, I think, are the weak spots. Moon more so. Moon, I think, it's too often. I can't tell if it's a communication thing or if it's him not knowing enough about a vision and you know, lane control, because there's too many times where I feel like Moon tries to make a play or tries to position himself on the map in a way that would help his team or help his lanes, and then gets caught out or you know, gets caught in a position that ends up with him dying, and somebody like GBM has to try and clean it up, or Altec has to clean it up. And I feel like that happens too often. And it's one of those things that you look at it and you could say, well, it's communication. Like, he tried to tell GBM do this, and GBM was just like, "Por qué?" And it didn't happen. Or it's one of those things where Moon is just like, well, I did this in Challenger Series and I got away with it all the time. Why can't I do it here? And so I don't know about that.
Yeah, it's hard because you watch, like, a game that stands out for me and him was the game they played against Team Liquid a couple weeks back. He was on Elise and just went off. Just bringing up the stats now. He went 5-1-13 on that Elise, and was a really strong carry in that game. And but you see a game like that and you're like, why doesn't this translate to other things against a pretty good Team Liquid team?
Mind you, Elise is a champ that is good in 1v1s. Is actually one of the best champs in 1v1s. And so I feel like that may have been a part of it. I can't remember when that game was.
He was even up against Dardoch on Lee Sin, who's the best non-import Lee Sin player.
And so that's a matchup that actually is pretty even in the 1v1. I've played it a ton of times from the Elise perspective. And it comes down to the Q versus the stun from Elise, right. the web shot, or not web shot. I can't remember now. But
I'm bad for
yeah, it's gonna completely. I'm lost. But it's all about who hits it. Because if Lee Sin can land the Q, but if you can land the stun mid jump, then you win the fight. Right. Or if you dodge the Q and land the stun, you win the fight. If you miss the stun, you basically lost the fight unless you're up in levels or in items. But it's a matchup that can go either way. And so I think that, and also Elise is a champ that has a really good escape in her. I'm terrible. I play Elise so much, I should know this. And she has a great escape mechanic that I feel like fits to Moon's abilities. But like in the last week, Moon played against Dignitas on Lee Sin and went 1-7.
That's
like it's. I'm sorry. This is the first week. Why is that pulling up? I am having a moment here. Yeah, I was like, I was gonna bring up that match because I was like, well, how do you do against Dignitas? And it was like, oh, they did bad, but that apparently was in the first week according to this. But they did play against TSM. I want to pull that up right now because I'm actually pretty curious about that. How he did personally. So he did 5-5-8 on Kindred against the Gragas. That's not surprising. And Sven Skaren on Gragas is just awful. I like the quote that GBM said in an interview, which was, the only thing that Sven Skaren can throw is Gragas are games. Yeah, it's pretty accurate. But yeah,
it's like TSM had a gold league in that whole game. Anyway, well, we can talk about that game actually while we're here. You have this TSM team that obviously really kind of needs this win, especially just for momentum into the next into the playoffs. And they have a pretty sizable goal lead at 9.5K at 27 minutes, and then it's just like kind of a steady decline of just losing objectives and losing towers and just not having, again, just seeing that lack of cohesion from TSM going up against this energy team that they end up losing to in this game. Man, I like TSM is kind of doing that thing where they're just finding ways to lose games now.
I think it's funny. I actually think that game was better for TSM. And
he had a 9.5K gold lead. Tell me, Double played great in that game.
He did, but for a different reason. I think partway through the game they realized, wait guys, if we win this, we play against Liquid in the playoffs. If we lose,
no guys, we're gonna lose.
Yeah, they were like, guys, stop winning, stop it. We need to play against Cloud9. If we lose, we play against Cloud9. And they're just like, oh, right, sorry, let's do that. So
they'd really rather play against.
No, I think that they don't care. I think that they want the wins. I think that they're a team that seems so confident that they can take anybody, but they can't.
I think they're confident in their ability to play series. Anyway, to play in a best of whatever.
That's true.
I think they can take that and say, hey, if we get a couple games to adjust to a team, they might be able to do it. Like, if you saw this game against Energy and they lose this first game, okay, we had a 9.5K gold lead. What went wrong? Let's take this into game 2 and figure out what we did wrong and do that better. I think TSM could figure that out. In the one-off game where it's like, oh, we threw that game. Well, you don't have a chance to come back, so there you go.
I do think, though, in the long run, I think it's actually better for them. I think that they have no chance against Team Liquid. I think they have a chance against Cloud9. So I think that's good for them. And I actually have very minimal thoughts about Cloud9. I think they had a very bad week, and I think that
they still went 1-1, but they did lose a game. I definitely did not think they were going to lose.
I also just think that they, like, in their match against Liquid, they just looked like shambles, and it was one of those things that I was having flashbacks of Royal Club where it was like bot lane lost, so they don't know how to shot call, and which is not something we're seeing from Cloud9. Usually, high can shot call from any disadvantage. He's just like, I don't care. I want my team to win. But I don't know what it was. I feel like it might have been an off day, whatever it was. But it felt like the second they got behind, they just, like, shut down. And I still think they're a strong team. I still have good hopes for them in the playoffs. But I'm really hoping that they can fix some of these issues, including High's champion pool, and hopefully this will.
Well, I don't think they're going to fix highest champion pool in the short term, or even the long term. I think
not this split.
Just like, yeah, not the split. Maybe next split he adds one champion. I don't know. But it's not even like everyone knows you can't get him on Morgana. That's pretty much it. But he still is okay. I think actually C9 Sneaky this week tunneled on this Jhin pick that he's been spamming a lot in solo queue if you watch his stream, and of course we saw it do so well at IAM Katowice, and it's strong, got its recent buffs and all that. I think he blind picked it into this game against Team Liquid 2, which didn't help. So they were able to kind of build a comp around not letting Sneaky to be up to go off. He doesn't get a single kill this whole game, and is just behind the entire game. And with a poor mid game of Jhin and him being all about the late game after that, it's if you could shut that down, you got a good game plan. So I think their biggest problem there, ironically for one of the best teams that have been historically known for having really good pick ban phases, I think they picked really poorly in this game against Team Liquid.
I agree, and if I remember correctly, I'm trying to remember how the picks and bans went in this game. I
just know specifically they blind picked Jhin, which is silly. It just is silly.
I think I'm trying to remember, but I feel like they blind picked Azir as well. I might be wrong here, but I feel like
can't remember top man.
Yes, they did. I remember this now because Team Liquid had immediately locked in Corki. Corki was locked in at the beginning, and they thought it was going to be Corki in the mid lane.
Right.
So they grabbed Azir, which would have been a good matchup, and then they didn't realize the last pick that it was like, oh, whoops, this is not Corki mid. And when you look at the draft that Team Liquid had started to make, it actually did look like a Corki mid, but somewhere along the lines, whether it was Loco Doco or somebody else noticed. They were like, he picked Azir, let's not play Corki mid. Piglet, you can play Corki, right? And they're like, yeah, okay, well, let's lock in Zed. And
Piglet played a ton of Corki at Worlds when they won the championship there, and Piglet's great on that champion. So.
Yeah, and I think the picks and bans is where this game was lost, and
sure.
I'm actually kind of glad you reminded me of that, because I remember having that I wanted to talk about this, because it was one of those games that it was like, I feel like it was lost in picks and bans, and that doesn't happen much anymore, which is nice to see. I think the lower teams in LCS in North America, I don't know about you, but I have a lot less to say. Echo Fox, I think, has a very short story in that they're a team that would have been a lot better if not for the visa issues.
Yeah, totally. And like I said in the introduction of NA, I'm just glad they're not up for relegation, because I think as much as I kind of just want to see them play more games, which is kind of the unfortunate part of not being up for relegation, is that they're for sure not going down. So I'm good with that.
Yeah, and it seems like it was a team that its roster was put together last second, and I feel like next split, if they do make any roster changes, I think that they have not only the money behind it, but they also have, I think, one of the best team owners in the league. Who I think will inspire them to get maybe a few more high-end roster picks.
I feel like this is a team that might just add a player that could be really good. Like let's say someone from Renegades gets relegated and they go, oh man, we can use
Seraph or
Crumbs
something.
or Ninja or something, right? Or Seraph.
Crumbs. You have a lot of Renegades and you're like, let's put Crumbs over Hard. No.
Sorry. Honestly, I was just like, my mind blanked. I'm like, who's on his Renegades team again? And
that was the first name that was Dignitas levels of shot calling. You picked the worst player on the team, and you're like, he'd be great. He'd be a great, he'd be better than Hard.
He's an early juggler. Drop the mic.
I'm so disappointed in you, Johnny. But it's funny because Echo Fox actually, I think about it, and it's like, I don't know who I'd replace that roster. It's a really strong roster. I think Baby, who's now big, was the one weak point of the team, I thought. Like, walking into this roster, I was like, Hard is going to be okay. He's a serviceable non-import jungler. Froggen is, I think, okay. I kept underestimating him the past 2 years because his splits have been terrible in Europe. But he showed up. He showed up.
Yeah, you feel like Froggen was slipping, like it was past his prime kind of thing.
But he showed up. He shut me up. He shut me up. Keith, I actually had a lot of hope for.
I had hope for too. Mostly just based on like he was on TSM and was the backup, and he was on backups. Mostly for the storyline, I had faith in Keith, to be honest. And he did make #1 in Challenger. Like he was like every challenge that's kind of been put in front of Keith, he answered, but still wasn't given a shot. So yeah, I had hope for Keith mostly for the storyline, but he's shown it's worth it.
The two question marks to me, more than anything, were KFO and Baby. KFO, nobody knew anything about. He's a solo queue star from Korea. No one knew anything about. And I gotta be honest, even with they talk about how his English isn't great at all. But even now, I see him making rotations that you don't see out of the non-import top laners. Like, he's actually pretty good at it. And I don't know if it's just that he knows what to do, or that, he actually understands shot calling enough to respond. We don't know. But I think that if there is any room for improvement in communication with him, I mean, the sky's the limit, because the guy's already pretty good. And Baby, who I keep calling him Baby, but he's big now.
He's big now, yeah.
He grew up. He's somebody who I had poor expectations for. I thought he was terrible. I was like, why did this team pick up like X Special or somebody who was also available? It made no sense to me. But according to Froggen and Keith in interviews, they talk about how Big is actually the shot caller of the team, and how he's a better shot caller than anything Froggen's ever dealt with. And it's like, Echo Fox's rotations are actually not terrible. It's like, maybe he is good, and he hasn't like thrown any games yet, as far as I've seen. So it's like, I don't know who I'd replace in this roster. I don't know if maybe they just need more time together or what. But I do feel like if they had no visa issues, they would have done better. And it's funny because we're talking about this team a little longer than I thought we would. Because it was like, I think they're a team that come next split will be a middle of the pack team, and I'm excited to see. I hope that Froggen shows up, and I hope Rick Fox sticks around, because I really like everything he has to say about esports and about his passion to be in the industry, which is awesome. Renegades, on the other hand, I am not a fan of. I am upset that they seem like a team. I feel like there's a lot of backroom deals going on at Renegades. Like,
right.
Chris,
especially how they got all their players to end this split, right?
Right, and it's a team that, for those who don't know, was originally started by Chris Badawi, who then got banned from the LCS for a year. So he said, okay, I don't own the team anymore. Monte Cristo, my co-owner, now owns the team. And then Chris Badawi, I can't pronounce his last name, Chris,
whatever,
also was a part owner in TDK at the time, who they just happened to be offering a really good trade in that their star mid laner and top laner for Alex Ich and the terrible sub top laners that Renegade had. Yeah, and it's like
Flares and RF Legendary.
And it's like, oh geez, that trade is just too good to pass up. Of course we'll take it. Just in time to survive relegation. And just in time for TDK to get carried by Alex Ich through relegation, or through Challenger Series. Yeah. And it's like, there's something going back there I'm not a fan of, and it rubs me the wrong way for that reason.
We have to move rather quickly here because we're running out of time. But if we do quickly want to talk about kind of the promotion tournament that's going on here, we have an interesting Apex team that did win the knockout stage of the Challenger Series. They do have, you mentioned X Special earlier, playing support, the former TSM member, played our bunch of teams. Keen, who's one of my favorite players, not currently in the LCS. I want to see that happen. Police at ADC. I think this Apex team has a shot at moving past one of these teams named Dignitas.
I think Apex is going to make it in. I think there's no questions about it. They look miles ahead of the other Challenger teams. The other Challenger teams don't look that bad. I think that it's also coached by a very good coach in that St. Vicious. And I feel like I'm hoping that the brand sticks around. I don't know anything about the owners, but I'm hoping the brand sticks around, because it seems like any team that St. Vicious brings in gets bought out and sold. Yeah. But it sounds like they're also being backed by somebody with a big wallet, so I'm hoping that St. Vicious sticks around, because it looks like a very strong roster, and they have. I
think he'd be a great coach, and just from what he's done to be able to bring different teams into the LCS somehow, and what he's now kind of doing as a coach, and it's always skewed when you hear someone do an analysis, and he's doing it on the analyst desk, and then he becomes a coach, and you're like, oh yeah, of course he's great, because you actually heard him speak. So it's a bit skewed. So I always try to reserve that kind of judgment, but I think he's got a little bit of a track record now of like, he's proven he can do this, and he's doing it multiple times.
Yeah, and I think Team Impulse is a team, I'm also going to say 50-50 if they make it out or not. The other team that's in there is TDK, who is really hard to judge because they look terrible in Challenge Series, and they bring in Alex Ich, so they look pretty good. So I have very 50-50 expectations if it's going to be Team Impulse or TDK. Renegades, I think, is miles ahead of all other 4 teams. So yeah, I don't see them. I don't see them losing.
I see TDK winning this game against Dignitas. I think it'll actually be pretty close. Might be interesting. I don't know, because Dignitas has the ability to get leads in games, and we'll see if TDK can do the same thing to Dignitas. If Dignitas somehow throws it, I don't know if they're gonna be able to take advantage of Dignitas being able to throw games. It's hard to tell. We'll have to watch that kind of going on. And just so everyone knows, their games will be starting April 6th. It is delayed a week for the promotion tournament for North America. So this starts April 6th. So yeah, you'll have TDK versus Dignitas, and then the winner of that will go on to play the Renegades. And the winner of that will make it to the LCS, while match C will be Team Impulse and Apex. The winner of that makes it to the LCS, and the loser of that will play the loser of match B to see who becomes that third team in the LCS. So yeah, I kind of see it going. Maybe I
see Apex beating Impulse.
I could very much see that. Impulse might be able to take that match D against whoever they face, maybe. But yeah, I could definitely. I feel like Apex is gonna be making it here. I feel like Renegades is gonna be making it here. So it's kind of gonna be a fight between the rest of those, between Dignitas, TDK, and Team Impulse. If how that goes.
I think it's gonna be either way. I think it's gonna be fun to watch. I think that this is one of the first years I feel like either challenger team in both regions has a chance of making it in. There's a lot of times where there's either one challenger team who you know is going to make it in, and that one team that's just not even close. Or it used to be 3 teams, mind you. So it used to be one team that was going to make it, 2 teams that were never going to. All 3 teams look terrible. And then sometimes you saw an upset. But then this year, I think that the brackets are much nicer, and also you have teams that I feel like are on par with the lower tier LCS teams. And it's going to be a great match to watch. So definitely watch those because maybe you're going to find your new favorite team, maybe a new little brand. You're going to get yourself a little shirt, a Apex shirt, and you're going to be a big little LCS fanboy of
you're
going to
burn this TSM jacket because they suck.
Exactly. But it's been fun. I'm excited that I got this nice little shiny bar now.
Yeah, that's it. I got to step up my I have Link.
Oh,
that's pretty cool.
I'm gonna beat you again. I got a Poro.
What? Oh, I got a Poro. Where's my Teemo hat? I can put on my Teemo hat.
But it's been fun, Jonny.
I gotta run.
This has been episode 3 of the Outplay podcast. I'm Globas from Lazy Esports. Check out LazyEsports.com, Lazy Esports on Twitter, Lazy Esports on Facebook, and Jonny Esports.
From the Esports Radio Show, tune in Sunday if you're in Winnipeg to CKUW 95.9 FM or just CKUW.ca, or get the TuneIn Radio app Sunday at 4 o'clock to listen to my radio show, as well as check out IntoTheLeague.com. And we're actually running a giveaway some RP points and stuff, so check that out as well on my Facebook, facebook.com/Free Sports Radio Show. I think it's it. All right, we're out of here. Goodbye, everybody.